The red sky burned with fire as the human army fell back across the broken desert. Captain Aaron Vale stood alone at the front line, his armor scratched, his rifle almost empty. Around him the sand shimmered from heat and laser fire. He knew the Battle of Vareth was lost. His orders were clear: cover the retreat and make sure his soldiers reached the evacuation craft. He would stay behind. He moved across the battlefield with steady steps, his boots crunching on shattered metal and burned ground. The Xylan troops were closing in. They were taller, faster, and armed with energy weapons that cut through steel like paper. Aaron had seen what they did to prisoners. He had no plans to become one. But even in defeat, he would fight until the last moment. Humanity was not known for surrendering easily. A nearby explosion threw him off balance. His visor cracked and dust filled his mouth. As he pushed himself up, something caught his attention. A faint cry. It was small, weak, almost lost beneath the roar of battle. He turned toward the sound and saw movement near a fallen transport. Cautiously, he moved closer, weapon raised, expecting an enemy soldier. Instead, he found a small figure trapped under a piece of metal. The figure was trembling, covered in thin, pale blue skin that shimmered faintly in the light. Two large silver eyes looked up at him in terror. She was a child, a Xylan child, maybe 10 years old in human years. Her arm was pinned and she was bleeding from a cut across her forehead. For a moment, Aaron froze. He could end her life in seconds. This was the daughter of his enemy, part of the species that had killed thousands of humans. Every instinct told him to walk away, but something inside him refused. The fear in her eyes reminded him of his own niece back on Earth. The same helplessness, the same innocence. He dropped his weapon, lifted the heavy metal with a grunt, and freed her arm. She whimpered, clutching it close to her chest. "It's okay," Aaron said softly, even though she couldn't understand his language. He tore a strip from his uniform and tied it around her wound to stop the bleeding. She stared at him, confused and scared, but did not pull away. Above them, another explosion shook the ground. The Xylan airships were approaching fast. Aaron looked toward the human lines. His people were already gone. The last ship had taken off. He was stranded. He looked back at the girl. If he left her here, she would die in the next blast. He couldn't do that. He picked her up gently. She was light, almost weightless, her strange alien skin cool against his armor. She struggled weakly, making small, frightened sounds, but he held her close and started running toward a cluster of rocks that could provide cover. He didn't know why he was doing it. Maybe because no one else would. Lasers struck the sand around them, throwing up clouds of fire. Aaron dove behind the rocks just as a shell landed nearby. The shockwave threw them both down. He landed hard on his side, protecting her with his body. The girl screamed as debris rained down, but he covered her head with his arms and held still until the dust settled. When the air cleared, he was bleeding from his leg. His armor cracked open. The girl was crying softly but alive. He smiled weakly. "Told you we'd make it," he whispered, though she didn't understand. He checked his communicator. It was dead. His oxygen was running low. He leaned back against the rocks, breathing hard. The battle outside had changed. The human presence was gone. The Xylan forces were moving through the wreckage, finishing what was left. He could hear their heavy steps, their commands in a sharp clicking language. He knew they would find him soon. Maybe they would kill him. Maybe worse. But at least the child would live. He tried to make her hide behind him, but she clung to his arm, trembling. He didn't know her name or who she was, but she didn't seem like any kind of threat. Just a lost child in a war started by others. When the soldiers finally arrived, Aaron didn't fight. He laid his weapon down, raised his hands, and stepped away from the girl. The Xylan commander aimed his rifle at him, but the child ran forward, shouting something. The commander stopped, lowering his gun slightly. Then others came, armored and silent, surrounding Aaron. They spoke quickly, their voices urgent. The girl clung to Aaron's arm and wouldn't let go. One of the soldiers pointed toward him and said something that sounded like an order. Aaron understood the tone. It was disbelief. They were asking why a human would protect one of their own. The commander barked an order and 2 soldiers grabbed Aaron. He didn't resist. He looked down at the child one last time as they pulled him away. She reached out, her silver eyes wide and wet. "You'll be okay," he said quietly. Though she couldn't understand, he hoped she believed it anyway. As they dragged him through the battlefield, he saw the symbols on the soldier's armor, royal insignia. Whoever that girl was, she was important. Maybe that was why he was still alive. His mind spun with exhaustion, the pain in his legs spreading. But deep down, he knew that this single act would not go unnoticed. He had saved someone who mattered. Hours later, Aaron woke up inside a cold metal cell. His wounds had been treated, his armor taken. A soft humming filled the air, the steady rhythm of alien machines. Outside his cell, he saw strange figures walking past. Xylan guards, tall and thin, their eyes glowing faintly under the dim lights. He sat up slowly, his muscles aching. He didn't know where he was, but it was far from Vareth. He thought about escape, but the door was reinforced with an energy field. He had no way out. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling, and wondered what would happen next. Then footsteps echoed down the hall. 2 guards appeared, flanking a tall figure in silver robes. It was a woman, or something close to one. Her presence filled the corridor with quiet authority. Her skin was the same pale blue as the child's, but her eyes were sharper, colder. She moved with grace, her expression unreadable. The guards opened the cell. The woman stepped inside. Aaron stayed seated, his eyes narrowing slightly. The woman studied him in silence for a moment. Then she spoke in accented English. "You are the human who saved my daughter." Aaron blinked, surprised that she knew his language. "Your daughter?" he repeated. "She would have died on your battlefield," the woman said. "You protected her." He nodded slowly. "I did what anyone should do." "Not anyone," she said softly. "Your kind kills without mercy, yet you did not." Aaron met her gaze without fear. "War doesn't change what's right," he said. "No child should die for what adults started." For the first time, the Queen's expression shifted. It wasn't anger, it was curiosity. "You had no reason to save her. No advantage to gain." "I don't need one," Aaron said simply. The Queen studied him a moment longer, then turned to her guards. "He is not to be harmed," she ordered. "Bring him to the royal vessel. He is to be kept alive." As they led him away, Aaron's thoughts spun. He had no idea where they were taking him or what she meant by kept alive, but he sensed something had changed. He was no longer just a prisoner. He was something else, something they didn't understand yet. And as the ship lifted off, leaving the burning moon behind, Aaron Vale looked out the window at the stars. He had no weapon, no freedom, and no allies. But deep inside, he felt calm. He had done the right thing. Whatever happened next, he would face it the same way he faced everything, as a human who refused to let war steal his soul. Aaron Vale sat inside a silver chamber that hummed quietly around him. The walls were smooth and bright like liquid glass, and the floor shifted with every small vibration of the ship. He had been on this alien vessel for days, maybe weeks. He had lost count. The Xylan guards spoke little, and when they did, he could not understand their language. They brought him food that tasted strange but kept him alive. Every day he wondered when his interrogation or execution would come, yet nothing happened. He was treated like a prisoner, but not roughly. It was confusing. Through the narrow window of his chamber, Aaron could see the endless stars stretching into darkness. Somewhere out there was Earth, still fighting a war that seemed hopeless. He imagined his crew, his friends, the people he left behind. Maybe they thought he was dead. Maybe that was easier for them. He had accepted that possibility long ago. One day, the door opened without warning. A tall guard with armor that gleamed like liquid metal motioned for him to follow. Aaron stood up, cautious but calm. He had no weapon, no power, nothing except his will. The guard led him down a long corridor filled with glowing lights and strange symbols on the walls. The air smelled clean but cold, like metal and rain. At the end of the hallway, a large door slid open, revealing a chamber unlike anything Aaron had ever seen. The ceiling arched high, covered with what looked like floating crystals. At the center stood a throne carved from translucent stone, surrounded by a soft blue mist. Sitting upon it was the same woman he had seen before, the Queen. She was tall and graceful, her presence commanding but not cruel. Her eyes shone like silver mirrors reflecting the light of the room. She looked both young and ancient, beautiful in a way that didn't belong to human understanding. Around her stood advisors, silent and still, their faces hidden behind veils of light. The guards pushed Aaron gently to the center of the room. He stood straight, refusing to show fear. The Queen spoke first. "Captain Aaron Vale," she said in fluent English. Her voice was calm, controlled. "You are the human who risked his life to protect my daughter. Aaron nodded slowly. Yes, he said. I didn't know who she was at the time. That child is Lyra, the Queen said. My only heir. If she had died, my bloodline would have ended. You saved her life, though your kind have taken many of ours. Why? Her gaze was sharp, searching. Aaron met it without flinching. Because she was a child, he said simply. Because she was scared. And because she didn't deserve to die for something she never chose. The room was silent. Some of the advisors exchanged glances, their shimmering forms rippling slightly like disturbed water. One of them stepped forward and spoke in their language, a tone filled with warning. The Queen listened, then lifted her hand to silence him. Her eyes never left Aaron. Do you know who I am? She asked. Aaron hesitated. You're the ruler of the Xylan Dominion, he said finally. Your people call you Syraxis. She tilted her head slightly. Your kind names me Queen of Shadows, and she said, To you I am the enemy. To my people I am their protector. Tell me, Captain, why should an enemy of my race be allowed to live after killing so many of my soldiers? Aaron looked down at his hands. They were still bruised from the last battle. Because I didn't kill them for pleasure, he said quietly. I fought because I had to. Because they came for us first. I did what soldiers do, but I never stopped being human. Human, Syraxis repeated almost to herself. Such a strange word, spoken with pride and sorrow together. Aaron didn't reply. He stood in silence, feeling the weight of her gaze. Finally, she rose from her throne and walked toward him. Her steps were soundless on the glass floor. When she stood before him, she was close enough that he could see faint silver lines running across her skin, patterns that pulsed softly, like veins of light. My daughter speaks of you, she said quietly. She calls you protector. She has not slept since the battle. When she does, she dreams of the man who carried her through fire. You saved her without knowing her name. You shielded her with your own body. Tell me, human, was it bravery or guilt? Aaron met her eyes. Neither, he said. It was the right thing to do. The Queen studied him in silence for a long time. Then she turned and walked back to her throne. Her advisors began to speak again, their voices overlapping like whispers of the wind. Finally, one of them stepped forward. My Queen, he said in English, his tone cold. This human is dangerous. His people will use his survival to claim moral victory. He should be executed immediately. Syraxis didn't answer right away. She looked down at Aaron again. He stood tall, unbroken. There was no fear in his expression, only tired determination. After a moment, she raised her hand, silencing her advisor. No, she said. He will not die. The advisors murmured in protest, but she ignored them. He will remain here under my care, she continued. As a prisoner, yes, but a valued one. I wish to understand this. Humanity that drives him. Aaron frowned slightly. You want to study me? Syraxis's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. You could call it that, she said. I want to see if compassion is weakness or strength. I can tell you already, Aaron said. It's both. That made her pause. Explain, she demanded. Aaron took a slow breath. Compassion makes us act when logic says we shouldn't. It makes us protect others even when it's dangerous. Sometimes it hurts us. Sometimes it saves us. But it's what makes us human. Syraxis regarded him quietly, her expression unreadable. Your words are simple, she said finally. But they hold weight. She looked to her guards. Take him to the upper cell. Give him food, light, and space to walk. He is not to be harmed unless he tries to escape. Aaron bowed his head slightly. I wasn't planning to, he said. As the guards led him away, he could feel the eyes of every advisor following him. He knew he was a subject of curiosity, maybe even fear. He had no idea what the Queen truly intended, but he could tell she was not like other rulers. There was something behind her calm, a conflict between duty and something she didn't yet understand. They placed him in a new chamber, larger than before. Through a window he could see the alien capital spread beneath him, a vast world of glass towers, glowing bridges and rivers of light. It was beautiful and cold like a living machine. The guards left without a word. Aaron walked to the window and rested his hands against the smooth surface. He wondered how long he would remain here. A day, a year? Forever, he didn't know, but he could feel that something was changing, not just around him but within the Queen herself. She had seen something in him that challenged her view of humanity. Later that night, a soft knock echoed at his door. It opened slowly, and the small figure of the Queen's daughter stepped inside. Lyra smiled shyly, holding a small glowing orb in her hands. She said something in her language and placed the orb on his table. It shone with gentle light, warm and comforting. Aaron smiled back, nodding in thanks. She didn't need to understand his words to see his gratitude. When she left, he sat on the floor beside the glowing orb. Its light reminded him of the stars above Earth, far away and unreachable. He closed his eyes, feeling an odd peace. Maybe his capture had meaning. Maybe this strange twist of fate would lead to something bigger than war. Far above the city, in her throne room, Queen Syraxis stood by her own window, staring at the same stars. Her advisor approached and bowed. "My queen," he said, "you risk too much for this human. He will bring weakness into your heart." Syraxis did not answer. Her gaze remained fixed on the darkness beyond the glass. "Perhaps," she whispered, "or perhaps he will show me something my kind has forgotten." For the first time in years, the queen felt uncertain, not of her power, but of her understanding of life itself. And in that quiet uncertainty, the fate of two species began to change. The days in the alien palace turned into weeks, but Aaron Vale stopped counting after a while. Life as the queen's valued prisoner was strange. He was not locked in a cell anymore, but he could not leave either. Guards followed him everywhere, and his every move was watched. Yet he was treated with a kind of respect that puzzled him. His room was comfortable, filled with light and soft sounds. Food was brought to him regularly, and sometimes the queen's daughter Lyra came to visit. Lyra had started learning English. At first she only knew a few words, but she was quick to learn. "Hello," she said one morning, standing at his door with a proud smile. Aaron laughed softly. "Hello, Lyra," he replied. She handed him a strange flower that glowed faintly in the dark. "For you," she said carefully. Her voice was uncertain but full of warmth. Aaron took it gently, his heart softening. "Thank you," he said. Her visits became a routine. They sat together, she asking questions in broken English, he answering with patience. She told him about her world, the floating cities, the crystal seas, and the strange creatures that lived beneath them. Aaron listened, amazed by the beauty she described. He told her stories of Earth, green forests, blue oceans, and rain that smelled like soil. She listened with wide eyes, as if hearing about a dream. Sometimes the queen herself came to observe. Syraxis never spoke much during these visits. She stood quietly behind them, watching as her daughter laughed freely with the human. To her people, humans were a violent, inferior race. Yet this man showed patience, kindness, and humor, things the Xylan rarely displayed. It disturbed her in ways she could not explain. One evening, Syraxis finally approached him after her daughter had gone. The room was quiet except for the hum of alien light. "You teach her well," the queen said softly. Aaron looked up from where he sat. "She learns fast," he replied. "Children usually do when they're not taught fear." The queen tilted her head slightly. "Fear is what keeps our people safe," she said. "It is what has kept our empire strong for centuries." Aaron stood up slowly. "Maybe," he said, "but it also keeps people from living." His tone was calm, not challenging, but the words lingered in the air like a quiet echo. The queen looked at him with curiosity. "You speak as though fear has no use," she said. "But I have seen what happens when it is removed. Chaos, betrayal, weakness." Aaron met her gaze evenly. "And I've seen what happens when it rules everything," he said. "You stop trusting anyone. You stop caring. You build walls so high that even peace can't reach you." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the queen turned away, her silver robe brushing softly across the floor. "You think like no creature I have met," she said quietly. "Perhaps that is why your kind frightens the galaxy." She left without another word, but her steps were slower than before. The next day, Aaron was escorted to a large room filled with floating screens and glowing symbols. It was the palace's war chamber. The queen was there with her advisors studying a map of stars. When she saw Aaron, she motioned for him to come closer. "You fought in many battles," she said. "Tell me, what do you see when you look at this?" Aaron looked at the star map. It showed fleets, colonies, and borders of conflict. "I see fear," he said. "Everyone trying to control everyone else." The advisors murmured among themselves, insulted by his bluntness. One of them stepped forward. "Human, you speak of things beyond your understanding," he said coldly. "Our wars are necessary for order." Aaron didn't back down. "Maybe they started that way," he said. But when does it stop being about order and start being about pride? The room fell silent. The Queen's eyes narrowed, not in anger but in thought. You believe peace is possible? She asked. I believe people can choose it, Aaron replied. But it takes strength, the kind your daughter already has. At the mention of Lyra, the Queen's expression softened for a brief moment before she hit it again. You speak as if you know my people better than I do, she said. Aaron shook his head. No, I just know what happens when we forget what matters. That night the Queen did not sleep. She walked alone through her palace, her mind filled with confusion. The human's words echoed in her thoughts. She had always ruled with logic and power, believing mercy was weakness. Yet this single man, this fragile mortal creature, had made her question that belief. The next morning she summoned Aaron again. Tell me, she said, how do your people endure loss? You live short lives. You face pain constantly. How do you not fall apart? Aaron thought for a moment. We fall apart sometimes, he said honestly, but we help each other stand again. That's what makes us strong. Not how much we can destroy, but how much we can rebuild. The Queen studied him silently, then dismissed the guards. Leave us. The room emptied, leaving only the two of them. She approached slowly. My council says you are dangerous, she said. They say your ideas spread like a disease. That compassion will weaken our hearts, Aaron smiled faintly. Maybe it will, he said. But maybe it will also make you stronger than fear ever could. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, to his surprise, she sat down beside him. You remind me of someone, she said softly. Before I became queen, I had a friend who spoke of peace. I called her a dreamer. When the wars began, she died protecting a village that wasn't hers. I thought her foolish. Now I wonder if she was simply human in spirit. Aaron looked at her with quiet respect. Maybe she was what you needed to remember, he said. Before Syraxis could reply, an alarm echoed through the palace. The lights flickered and the air filled with sharp tones. The doors burst open as a guard rushed in. My queen, he said urgently, our outer colonies are under attack. The Rhinar Empire has crossed the border. The Queen stood instantly. Prepare the fleet, she ordered. The guard bowed and hurried away. She turned to Aaron. The Rhinar were once our allies, she said. Now they seek to destroy us. Her voice was calm, but Aaron saw the tension in her eyes. Then they're afraid of you, he said. Fear always leads to this. She looked at him sharply. You speak of fear as if it is poison. It is, he said quietly. It just doesn't kill fast. She stared at him for a long time, then sighed. I will not let my world fall. But perhaps your way of thinking can serve a purpose. She called her officers. Bring the human to the war council. He will advise me. No one is to harm him. The officers looked uneasy but obeyed. Aaron felt the weight of a strange destiny pressing on him. He was still a prisoner, yet now he was being asked to help the very people who had fought against his own. He didn't know if this was trust or madness, but he accepted. If I can stop another war, he said, I'll try. In the following days, Aaron worked beside the Queen. He studied maps, advised on defense, and suggested strategies that avoided unnecessary destruction. Some of the Xylan officers mocked him at first, but when his ideas saved 2 outposts without bloodshed, they began to listen. The Queen's faith in him grew stronger, and whispers spread through the palace, whispers about the human who fought with words instead of weapons. Lyra visited often, bringing him reports and questions. She was proud that her protector was helping her mother. Sometimes the Queen would watch them from a distance, her expression unreadable. Something inside her was changing. She didn't say it aloud, but she felt it. A quiet respect and something deeper she couldn't define. But not everyone approved. In the council chamber, voices rose in anger. This human undermines our traditions, one advisor said. He must be removed before he poisons the Queen's mind. Syraxis stood silent as they argued. When they finished, she said calmly, Perhaps it is time our traditions changed. The room fell into stunned silence. The Queen had spoken, and no one dared to challenge her openly. That night, Syraxis went to the balcony of her palace. The stars shone brighter than ever, and far below her city glowed with calm beauty. Aaron stood nearby, gazing at the same stars. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, the Queen said softly, Your people may be broken, but they have a kind of strength I cannot ignore. Aaron nodded. We survive because we hope, he said, even when we shouldn't. Syraxis turned her head slightly, her eyes reflecting the starlight. Perhaps hope is the one weapon we have never learned to use. And in that quiet moment, two enemies stood side by side, not as conqueror and captive, but as two beings beginning to understand each other. Neither knew what was coming, but both sensed that the future of their worlds had already started to change. The alarm bells of the Xylan Palace rang again, louder and more urgent this time. Reports poured in that the Renar Empire had moved swiftly, capturing several outer colonies and cutting off supply lines. Syraxis paced in her war chamber, her mind racing. Aaron Vale, standing near the star map, watched carefully. Though he was still technically a prisoner, the Queen had placed him at the heart of the decision-making process. Her people were uneasy, but they followed her commands reluctantly. The Renar fleets are larger than we anticipated, an advisor warned, his voice sharp. They will reach the central systems within 3 standard cycles. We cannot hold them. Syraxis did not flinch. She turned to Aaron. You have seen battles, she said. How would you respond? Aaron studied the star map, tracing imaginary lines with his finger. They are fast but predictable, he said. They move in clusters and expect fear to slow us. We should strike where they least expect it. Cut off their supply lines first, then force them to spread their forces thin. Use your own smaller fleets for flexibility. The Queen listened, her silver eyes thoughtful. And if they corner us? She asked. If we cannot retreat, then we do the unexpected, Aaron replied calmly. We make them hesitate. Fear can only work if the enemy believes it will control us. We take the initiative and show them courage instead. Her advisors exchanged worried glances. One spoke up. My Queen, this human speaks of defying the Renar fleets, risking many lives for unpredictability. This is reckless. Aaron turned to face them, voice firm but measured. Reckless? Maybe. But calculated courage has saved more lives than blind obedience ever will. You fight like shadows on a map, not like creatures who live and breathe the stars. You fear loss more than you value survival. Syraxis's gaze softened slightly. You have a way with words, she said. And yet, I see truth in what you say. She looked to her advisors, commanding silence with her presence alone. Prepare the fleets as he suggests. We will strike decisively but carefully. Bring him to the command bridge for full implementation. As Aaron stepped onto the bridge, he was struck by the scale of the operation. Hundreds of Xylan ships floated in formation, engines glowing, shields active. Officers moved quickly, relaying orders through a complex network. Lyra appeared beside him, her small frame almost hidden among the towering figures. You will help? She whispered, eyes shining. I will try, Aaron said, smiling gently. Stick close, stay safe. The battle began before they even reached the front lines. Renar scout ships appeared, probing the defenses. Aaron directed small Xylan squads to flank and disrupt supply channels. The Renar responded with fire, but Aaron's tactics caused confusion. Ships were forced to split and their formations broke. Syraxis watched, her jaw tight, but her heart beat faster than she expected. The humans' ideas worked. The unexpected strategies saved many lives and bought time for the palace fleets to position themselves advantageously. Yet victory was fragile. In one sector, a Renar dreadnought approached the command bridge too quickly. Aaron saw the danger immediately. Divert the interceptor fleets. Focus fire on the engines. Don't let it reach the inner systems, he shouted. The Xylan officers hesitated, but Syraxis acted. Follow him, she commanded, her voice ringing through the chamber. The maneuver worked. The dreadnought was crippled, its path blocked by a formation of smaller ships. The Renar forces recoiled, and for a moment the tide of the battle shifted. Aaron leaned against the railing, exhaustion in his bones but satisfaction in his eyes. Lyra clutched his arm tightly, a quiet cheer escaping her. The Queen approached him once the immediate threat passed. You have changed the course of this battle, she said softly, almost reverently. And yet, you are still my prisoner. Aaron looked at her, understanding the weight of the words. He knew why. To release him would be to admit that humans could influence Xylan destiny. That could not happen lightly. We all play our roles, he said quietly. Even prisoners. Syraxis studied him for a long moment. Perhaps your presence is no longer a liability, but a symbol. I will consider it. In the following days, Aaron continued to work closely with the Queen. The Renar, frustrated by repeated failures, launched a bold assault on Xylan's core systems. The palace shuddered under attacks, alarms blaring constantly. Aaron suggested unconventional tactics, using decoys, feints, and misinformation to make the enemy believe the Queen's forces were weaker than they truly were. The Xylan officers were skeptical, but results spoke louder than words. Entire Rhynar squadrons were redirected into traps, losing ships without striking a blow to the palace's vital systems. Amidst the chaos, Aaron never left Lyra's side. He ensured she remained safe, teaching her small skills of observation and caution. She learned quickly, absorbing every detail of strategy and survival. Her trust in him grew, and in turn the Queen's confidence in his judgment deepened. Syraxis began to consult him not just on tactics but on diplomacy and leadership, listening as he explained why morale and hope could be as powerful as weapons. Yet, not all Xylan accepted him. Whispers ran through the corridors, advisors and officers speaking of disloyalty, of weakness, of a human teaching their rulers. "He is a threat," one said. "We cannot allow him to influence her further." Syraxis ignored them for the moment, but the tension simmered like a distant storm. Then came the pivotal moment. The Rhynar launched a surprise assault on the palace itself. Aaron and the Queen were on the command bridge when the alarm screamed. "They are inside the outer perimeter!" an officer shouted. Syraxis's face remained calm, but Aaron noticed the flicker of fear in her eyes. "We fight them together," he said. "I will cover the approaches. You lead the fleet. Trust your instincts," she nodded. "Prepare the palace defenses." They moved as one, human and queen, commander and ruler, prisoner and sovereign. Xylan soldiers hesitated at first but found courage in her decisiveness, strengthened by Aaron's calm presence. Together they pushed back the invaders, using clever maneuvers, traps, and distractions to turn the tide. Amid the chaos, Aaron saved Syraxis directly, stepping between her and a striking Rhynar blade. He fought with precision, using his human agility to redirect the attack and drive the enemy back. The Queen watched, her heart pounding, as she realized the human she had kept alive was no longer just a prisoner. He was a protector, a strategist, and a force that her empire could not ignore. When the battle finally ended, the palace and city were scarred but intact. The Rhynar retreating fleet disappeared into the darkness. Syraxis stood among her people, exhaustion and relief mingling in her expression. She turned to Aaron, eyes full of a mixture of gratitude and newfound respect. "You have done more than survive," she said quietly. "You have helped us endure." Aaron looked at her, still catching his breath. "I only did what I could," he said. Lyra ran to him, throwing her arms around his leg. "Protect her," she whispered. Aaron knelt, embracing her gently. "Always," he replied. Yet as the celebration began, Aaron understood the delicate balance that remained. Some within the council still murmured against him, unwilling to accept a human's influence. Syraxis knew it too. She had risked much by allowing him this role, but the results could not be denied. The galaxy was watching now, and the human in her palace had proven that courage, ingenuity, and compassion could win battles where strength alone might fail. That night, Syraxis stood with Aaron on the palace balcony, overlooking the city of light and glass. The air smelled faintly of ozone from the battle. "You have changed the way I see my people," she said softly. "And perhaps the way I see myself." Aaron nodded. "Sometimes change is born from survival," he said. "Sometimes from those willing to protect others even when it is dangerous." She studied him for a long moment, the weight of the war and the unexpected partnership settling between them. "Perhaps humanity is not what I believed," she said quietly. "Perhaps you are the proof I needed that strength is not only in might, but in heart and mind." Aaron looked at her, understanding that the bond forged in battle and trust had shifted something fundamental. He was still a prisoner, yet he was no longer merely captive. He had become a vital part of the Xylan future, a bridge between fear and hope, between war and survival. The stars above glimmered in quiet witness, and for the first time he felt that maybe the galaxy could be changed, not through domination, but through courage, wisdom, and care. The war was far from over, but the palace had survived the first wave. Aaron Vale and Syraxis stood side by side on the balcony, overlooking a city still alive, still shimmering under the twin moons of the Xylan homeworld. Fires burned in the distance where Rhynar raiders had struck, but their forces were retreating, disorganized. Syraxis's mind raced as she weighed her next move. knowing another attack could come at any moment. Yet for the first time she did not feel hopeless. She had a human beside her, not just as a prisoner but as an advisor and ally. Aaron watched the city below, listening to the faint sounds of rebuilding. "Your people trust you," he said. "Even after everything, they follow your lead." Syraxis glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "They do, but not all of them approve of your presence." She paused. "Some still see you as a threat, a reminder that we spared an enemy when we should have struck harder." Aaron nodded slowly. "Trust is built in steps, not leaps. You've given them an example. That strength is not always in fear and power, but in choice." She studied him, her silver eyes thoughtful. "You speak as if you understand Xylan hearts better than any of my advisors." Aaron smiled faintly. "I only understand what I see. Courage, compassion, and loyalty are not unique to any race. They exist in everyone willing to act." The next morning, an urgent message arrived. The Rhinar had regrouped and were preparing a massive assault, larger than anything before. Aaron and Syraxis convened the War Council. The room was tense, filled with officers and advisors who whispered doubts about the humans still advising the Queen. Syraxis silenced them with a single look and addressed Aaron. "Your strategy saved us last time. What do you suggest for this assault?" Aaron moved to the central display, tracing the enemy formations with his finger. "They are overconfident," he said. "They think fear rules us. We use that. We will divide their fleet into sections, using our smaller ships for rapid strikes. Meanwhile, the palace defenses will remain strong, drawing their focus here while we hit their flanks." The council murmured, skeptical. Aaron met their eyes calmly. "We do not fight with anger. We fight with clarity. If they break their own lines, they cannot recover quickly enough to strike us again." Syraxis nodded once. "Implement it. I trust your judgment." The officers followed her orders, still uncertain but obedient. Preparations began immediately. Aaron walked among the soldiers and pilots, giving advice, encouragement, and careful instructions. He watched Lyra help relay messages, her confidence growing alongside his own. She was no longer just a child, but a young leader in training, inspired by his calm presence. The Rhinar fleet arrived with a roar that shook the upper atmosphere. Lasers and energy blasts tore through the outer defenses. Aaron's strategy unfolded like a well-rehearsed plan. Smaller Xylan ships weaved through the chaos, attacking supply lines, forcing the Rhinar to split their focus. Panic spread among the invaders, their numerical advantage blunted by confusion. Syraxis directed the palace fleet with precision, each command clear and decisive. Aaron shouted instructions to her officers, moving swiftly from station to station. "Focus here," he called. "Flank the left side. Don't let them regroup." The battle was brutal yet measured. Xylan and human coordination, though unusual, proved devastating. The Rhinar had expected a rigid, fearful enemy. They found instead adaptability and courage. At one point, a massive Rhinar dreadnought broke through the perimeter, heading straight for the palace. Aaron's heart raced. "Divert the interceptor squadrons. Target the engines, not the weapons," he yelled. Pilots hesitated, but Syraxis reinforced his command. The dreadnought slowed, forced to change course by concentrated fire. The palace survived, battered but unbroken. Hours later, the battlefield grew quiet. Smoke and debris hung in the atmosphere. Aaron leaned against a console, exhausted, his mind racing over the events. Syraxis approached him, her face marked by fatigue and relief. "You have done more than survive," she said. "You have saved lives, perhaps countless ones." Aaron shook his head. "I only did what was necessary. You led your people with strength. I only guided what you allowed." He glanced at Lyra, who ran toward him and hugged his leg. "Protect her," she whispered. Aaron bent down and held her gently. "Always," he said softly. The Queen watched them, her expression softening. She had made a choice, a decision that could alter her empire forever. She stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on Aaron's shoulder. "You have shown me what humanity can teach even the strongest of empires," she said. "Your loyalty, your courage, your compassion. These are not weaknesses. They are a force." Aaron looked up, surprised. "You're forgiving me?" Syraxis smiled faintly. "No, you were never my enemy. You were a human who acted rightly when it mattered most. And now I offer you a choice. You may remain here with freedom to move among my people, not as a prisoner but as an honored guest. Or you may return to your world, bearing the lessons we have learned together. Aaron considered the offer carefully. He thought of Earth, of the friends and family he might never see again. But he also thought of Lyra, of the Xylan people who had begun to trust him, and of Syraxis who had learned that strength could come from unexpected places. He began, then smiled. I will stay. Not as a prisoner, but as a protector and advisor. If my presence can prevent another war, I will do it. Syraxis nodded. Then it is decided, she said. Her advisors remained silent, some still wary, but none dared to challenge her word. She turned to her council. Let this be the start of a new era. Fear will no longer dictate our decisions. Courage, wisdom, and compassion will guide us. The city below began to rebuild with renewed energy. Soldiers and citizens alike spoke of the human who had changed the queen's heart. Aaron moved among them, helping to rebuild structures, advising commanders, and teaching Lyra lessons of strategy and care. The palace was alive with a sense of hope and purpose, something rare in the galaxy. At night, Aaron and Syraxis would walk together on the palace balcony, gazing at the stars. They spoke of leadership, morality, and the future. Sometimes Lyra joined them, laughing and asking questions that made both adults pause and think. In these quiet moments, the bond between human and Xylan grew, not one of prisoner and captor, but of allies, mentors, and friends. The Rhynar Empire had been beaten back, but Aaron knew the galaxy would not stay peaceful for long. Yet with the trust he had earned and the respect of a queen willing to change, he felt hope. The Xylan people had learned that strength was more than power. It was courage, wisdom, and the willingness to protect those who could not defend themselves. And Aaron Vale, the human who had once risked everything to save a single child, had become the living proof of that truth. For the first time in his life, he felt a sense of belonging not limited by species or borders. He was a human in an alien world, a protector in a realm of stars, and a friend to a queen who had learned that empathy could be stronger than any weapon. The galaxy, vast and uncertain, was no longer just a place of conflict. It was a place where understanding and courage could reshape the future, and he was ready to stand at the center of it all.